Hello everyone, welcome back to Springrealms here on our wonderful Patron server. So, here I am once more, as always, on the at the archive of sites, and evidently people have already managed to make their way here, but I've grown to expect that. And first thing that you might notice is there is a heck ton more witches around here, and there is good reason for that. Just like with the furnace drakes over at the Great Kiln and whatnot, we have now instigated a system which will prevent mobs we're not interested in spawning, but not interact with the actual region, so that we don't actually have any possible way of them being here. So in this case, currently the only two types of entities that are allowed to spawn inside the archive of sites are witches and skeletons. Skeletons because they're part of one of the librarian spells. So with that, what we do is we check for every single skeleton in this region that doesn't have the tag magic skell, which is what we'll give the ones that get summoned, and we add convert to witch. They then summon a witch on themselves, and then they are teleported to the bottom of spawn, and then just killed. So that way we should never have an excess of them just hanging around, and any skeleton that spawns here will just become a witch. So, for example, if I grab an egg, and I spawn one here, immediately it is a Deathly Librarian, which is the ones that actually spawn them, conveniently enough. So, yep, there we go. I still need to, tweak health values and attributes and whatnot on these guys, as well as make sure that they have their proper drop table, which is where all the magic spells come from. But that is pretty good, and if I wanted to, I could just make it so that they turn into regular witches and don't get turned into librarians. The librarians become only from the population of natural spawn witches and not just replacement witches, but for now, that is good. Anyways, that's just that little interesting point, just that interesting note there. But the main subject of the day is verticality, because the big experiment kind of thing for this particular dungeon is vertical space. So previously we had constrained areas that were a little bit up and down, that kind of thing, but those kind of defaulted to corridors between rooms again, which is not something that we want to be having terribly often. And then we had, before that, with Priscilla, we had just contained rooms on a flat surface, we had different scales of rooms, but they were mostly fairly small, with the exception of the boss room, which is very tall. But that was intentional, because that was the way that you'd beat that boss at optimum strategy. And then we had Erenus, where there was just an open sky, but we were still largely on a relatively flat plane. So, for this particular dungeon, we are going hard on there being lots of verticality to it, and that is already shown off by the sheer height of the place. This is the largest man-made structure on the server to date, to my knowledge at the very least. It's a big map. People make some tall stuff, but I think this is actually the largest thing we have currently. Rivals some things from Undermine, actually. And that then brings us the question: if it's basically one big room that you can move around at your approximate leisure, then how do we get up and down around it? And there's a handful of options in terms of vertical motion inside of Minecraft. The first and most obvious, of course, is the Elders, in fact, the stairs. So with this, we can go up at a fairly decent rate. Then there's things like climbing up water, and then there's ladders, which are direct verticals and such. The thing that we're currently looking at using is these, which are the float points. They just give you levitation for a certain distance above them. Not quite sufficient to stop you from taking damage all the time, but if you happen to see them, then they're better than nothing, at least. So, with that, we've also got these platforms I'm currently working on. This is my current idea of what might be occupying the sort of spaces on the sides here. Aeneas has their own little design over here as well for another portion of it. Obviously, we need to bookcases, libraries are kind of a problematic thing to make in Minecraft, because more or less the only thing you have to really hard denote a library is the bookcases, and you only got the one type. We might try a little bit of experimenting with that, now that we have Dave on board to help us out with some interesting stuff as well. Our little mad scientist Dave. But for now, this is what we got. So I'm just currently working to add some insets and such so that it looks a bit more three-dimensional and not flat. But that's that for now. So the main question we have is, how do we design the platforms that you're moving between? Because this is not a structure that behaves like a typical human library, that kind of thing. This was meant for people who were fully capable of flight and teleportation and just bounds, just leaping wherever they wished to be, that kind of thing. So this was not really intended for mortal exploration. It just happens to be that there are routes they can potentially use. We don't even know how... We also actually don't even know how big the gods were, just that they could do more or less a lot of things we can't, as red makers anyways. So there's also the possibility that we turn this basically into a jumping puzzle. So you go from one platform to perform a dive, to go to another platform, to perform a jump, to go to another platform, and so on and so forth until you get to a point of interest around the library. And let me just... actually, I'll just turn up my video settings here, so blip, there we go. Make this place a bit clearer for people on YouTube and such. And a jumping puzzle is an appealing idea, except that we are building this for a server, which means that we are building this for a population of people who all have very varying levels of processing power, computer power, that kind of thing. So it's entirely probable that in making this a jumping puzzle, we make it basically uncompletable for a portion of the user base, and that is not good. As a designer, that's not a good thing. You want your dungeons and whatnots to be things that everybody can complete, maybe not as easily as others, because there are different skill levels when it comes to this kind of stuff, but we want them to actually all be able to attempt it. And they can't really do that, as we found out with the Dungeon of Basilla. There are people on the server who have trouble being near huge redstone kind of contraptions and such. So we do need to take care of that. We might also need to limit the witch population around here. Jeez. Then again, this is a dungeon. It's meant to be hard. It's also the 4th dungeon, right before Tier 2 and gold and stuff becomes accessible. So if this is the last dungeon before golden apples become a renewable resource, we definitely want to make it hard. Or just a little extra bit hard. So I think some degree of jumping puzzle will probably be involved. I think we will definitely have some areas that you have to perform like a dive or a jump to. But there is one note that I've made to Aeneas that must be upheld, which is that with these platforms, there must always be at least one side you can fall off that will be lethal damage. That is to say, there must be at least one side where the distance to the ground beneath it is 23 blocks or more. Now, of course, if you happen to have potion effects, if you happen to have decent armor and stuff, 23 blocks is survivable. But if you're doing a corpse run, that's not quite the case. And that also means that we inherently build in the nature that players must proceed carefully, as well as it means that anything that uses explosives or knockback or anything inside of this dungeon has always a decent chance to do a lot of damage, if not outright kill somebody. So that makes this significantly more dangerous, even though the actual enemies in it aren't actually all that scary. I mean, honestly, these librarians are built more for crowd than anything else. So the lightning is dangerous. Yeah, the summoned skeletons, as we know now, are dangerous. I need to up your cooldown, by the way. But by and large, the potion effects to move you really slowly, not so scary. Not so that you're missing a block here. Come on, sir. Blip. There we go. There we go. Much better. Yeah. Practically falling off. I know it's an over-the-shoulder deal, but come on. Have some class. You're guarding a dungeon. So yes, we also have, as you can see there, a date for when this particular dungeon will be opening. That is the Sunday 29th. And that is still a ways away, but that's fine by me because it gives us lots of time to play around and experiment with the interior of this dungeon. Obviously, we have to think about the aesthetics a lot, because this is basically, this whole area is one big room and you're dancing around on stuff inside of it. And that means that you can pretty much always see the entire area of the dungeon, which means it has to look nice. And I think this might be a little too busy. I'm not quite sure how I feel about the pillar in the middle. That's giving it some depth, but we'll tinker. We'll work it out. But anyways, flip. Verticals. Not so easy. One thing I also have to think about is up here. Firstly, there's a whole freaking ton of witches up here, which there shouldn't be because, well, there isn't really much of anything up here, for one thing. For another thing, I don't know what to put up here, because typically this is just not a space that you go to, but I know pretty much without a doubt lots of players will. So maybe I'll turn this into slabs at least so that the witches don't appear up here. Maybe I'll put something else up there. I don't know, honestly. But going up there and dropping down is almost certainly going to be a strategy attempted by maybe 3 people at minimum, I'm going to say. And Bidding Clover and Kyo are among them, but probably they'll drag along somebody else as well. So, who knows there. These statues, I need to come up with some lore for these two. Because I know that they're not Philippos and Placidos. But I don't actually know who they are, if they're meant to be anybody at all. That's something I should write down in the lore. But we also have all of the magic spells done, so let me I was about to actually just teleport myself to something else, but I can do something a little bit cleaner. Lip. Oh yeah, right. Add. Commands, those things I use all the time. There we go. So, that's the tail end of the magic spell I used to teleport me back from the springs, but of course the dungeons don't have one. So, over here we have the completed. This is literally every single gate spell currently. Not just the ones that we'll get access to, which is these first 4. All of them. And oh boy. So basically what's happening here is that we're identifying the spells, standard stuff, and then we are adding the tag based on the specific tag of the book that you are holding. So I just grab that, and look, dunk. There we go. Cast Mercurial Gate Bacilla. So this will take me to Bacilla, which is a ways away, so I won't do that just yet. So you click the button, it does all this stuff, stays for 25 seconds, and it identifies it by the lore text. So Domain of Bacilla the Firm identifies that cleanly so that I can only be holding this one book and it will take me to the Bacilla. It will spawn a Bacilla gateway. Now here's hoping that I actually remember in editing to move my eye. So scoreboard player's tag, cast Merc Gate, that's cast Mercurial Gate, the spell identifier. Add Spawn Gate Bacilla if your selected item has the lore of Domain of Bacilla the Firm, and then it's all different things for that as well. Lovely. So that might be the longest trail, the largest number of command blocks related specifically to casting any given spell. I think that's pretty long. Oh boy. And then over here we only have the 4 of them that are actually set up, because these all have to go to specific coordinates, which are a little bit trickier. What's also good is that thanks to the fact that I've now separated this to, from spell to summoning the actual portal, I can now add execute tag Bacilla from the dungeon progress record. So this armor stand over here is the part that contains all of the known dungeon progress. So even if someone somehow gets a hold of a Mercurial Gate for, say, Akinum, which is right here, that's how far into the progress we are. We're way over here, actually. If somebody manages to get a Cast Mercurial Gate book for Akinum, it will not work. It will set their spellcasting cooldown and take their spirit, but it won't actually summon the gate. So that's a nice little limiter that ensures that I can mess around a bit more and be a little bit more careless. I won't be, but it's nice that I have the opportunity to be. So anyways, back to... Whoop, this is not quite where I want it to be, but oh hey, we have a little house. Whose is this? Sakura-chan. Oh. Also, there's lots of torches around Placidos. Okay. Huh, okay, right. Is that a... Oh, wow. Wow, okay, this is floating. I did not know this was even here yet, but then that shouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of puzzle. A lot of cursed dirt. Alright, anyways. Archive of sites, that's where I want to be. Hey. A lot of fun things around the server. I don't know if Dave's been tinkering with anything on the server just yet. I think he's mostly been practicing stuff inside of single-player world. But hopefully we'll get to see one or more of the the mini dungeons that he's got he's been tinkering with. He's got a lot of really interesting ideas that I'm very excited to bring to bear around here. Blip. One said these had to be easy. It is a dungeon. So that is it for the time being. Hope you've enjoyed, and hopefully I'll get to more full-length videos in the near future. My wrist is feeling a bit better, but it has its days. Anyways, with that, hope you've enjoyed, and I'll catch you all next time.